This is
welcome to
our
the Malaysia
future,
Pavilion.
where we
So we
believe
will be starting shortly in another 2 minutes. So please get yourself comfortable and then we can start. All right? Thank you. This one is a basket made from rattan and bamboo. Yes, from the jungle. Yes, you can keep your food there. Also, you can keep also some of the other things inside. Yes. Okay, everyone, I think we can start with our final session of the day, right? Okay. So good afternoon or good evening, everyone. So for those who have joined earlier, welcome back. And for those who just joined us, welcome and selamat datang to Malaysia Pavilion. So now we are moving into our final panel discussion of the day. The title is Indigenous Climate Resilience, the Sabah Renewable Energy Rural Electrification Roadmap, and it will spotlight on the transformative approach to achieving universal energy access in Sabah, Malaysia. So this session will highlight the innovative public-civic partnerships that have driven the project's success with close collaboration between the Sabah state government, civil society, and also international organizations. So our panelists for today will showcase community-centered solution and rural electrification efforts that not only empower local communities, but also strengthen climate resilience. Joining us for this session are Mr. Michael Mellin, the Head of People-Centered Program, UN Sustainable Energy for All, SE for All, Ms. Ayur Abdullah, the Executive Director, Energy Action Partners, and then we have Adrian Lasimbang, the Executive Director, Right Energy Partnership with Indigenous People, Tony Bong, and then the moderator for the important discussion is Ms. Gina Cornaby, the Program Director, Green Empowerment. So before we further deep delve into this topic, let's watch a video, right?
The Sabah Renewable Energy Rural Electrification Roadmap centers community-managed renewable energy mini-grids as the solution to power remote communities across the state.
Malaysia's two eastern states of Sabah and Sarawak are located on the island of Borneo. Sabah has a lot of forests, but it also has very diverse ecosystems. The Sabah Renewable Energy Roadmap, which is very much about engaging with the government and trying to come to a solution together for the rural electrification challenge. I would say the goal of the roadmap is to chart a course, right? Literally a map of how we get from the current state to a place where all those villages do have energy access, and that energy access is coming from renewable sources.
RE, dia bilang. RE dalam bahasa Inggris itu renewable energy.
Ada sosioekonomi juga kita kena tengok macam mana lagi, apalagi alternatif di kampung ini yang boleh mendatangkan sumber ekonomi selain daripada yang sedia ada.
I'd say energy access, it's a basic requirement for everyone. 100% access to energy for the people.
Begitu-begitu sajalah, bergelap-gelap begitu. Jadi itulah harapan kami agar apabila diperkenalkan ini proyek seumpama begini dengan secara community.
400 unelectrified villages were identified combining satellite, administrative, and field data. 206 were then surveyed to understand needs and aspirations, and feasibility studies were done on 57 of them. We created toolkits and training modules for capacity building, formed new alliances with renewable energy actors.
If you look at the actual map, of the Sabah roadmap, you can actually see the roads that are in Sabah and the scale of the rural electrification grid, as well as where all the villages are and what types of resources that we've identified nearby that could be used for rural electrification. This is a very high resolution map, and I think that on its own is very useful for guiding decision makers in determining where to invest resources. We've kind of gone the extra mile with the original intended scope of Roadmap project and have gone as far as to develop a kind of business plan or a program rollout plan for the state.
Bagi saya ada akses tenaga sangat penting untuk memudahkan kami buat kerja seperti macam kerja aktiviti malam lah. Bagi saya dia lebih penting kepada kawasan sekolah. Sebab sekarang guru-guru macam malam pun boleh tambahan masa belajar untuk pelajar sekolah lah. Sama bahan-bahan ataupun buah-buahan tuh yang cepat reput. Sekarang ada hydro, ada yang memiliki freezer, icebox, jadi boleh simpan lama.
For us, the reason why this initiative is particularly important is because it represents how we're going to be able to do this at scale. So a lot of the systems that we've installed in the past represent a model for how we would want energy access to look like at an individual scale. But this is one of the initiatives that really represents how we're trying to reach hundreds of thousands of people with a solution that actually has the opportunity to provide them with a livelihood.
Leadership and ingenuity can come from rural communities, pioneering low-carbon economies through renewables. We witnessed their motivation, innovation, and ambition to realize the roadmap towards a fully electrified Sabah.
All right. So now let's welcome the speakers and also the moderator to the stage to continue the discussion. Right?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. To people in the room, as well as our stakeholders, colleagues, and friends joining us virtually in our online live stream. Welcome to my dear panelists, our very esteemed colleagues, Bonnie, Ayu, Miguel. Thank you for being here. To build off of the amazing video that we just saw, and for a brief background, the Sabah Renewable Energy Rural Electrification Roadmap, Sabah RE2 is the abbreviation, spearheads a transformative approach to achieving universal energy access in the state of Sabah, Malaysia. The initiative aims to deploy 200 renewable energy mini-grids in unelectrified rural and indigenous communities over the next decade. So we want it to be done in 10 years. Today's session will highlight the innovative public-civic partnerships that were pivotal to the success of the Sabah RE2 initiative. And through close collaboration between the Sabah state government, civil society organizations, and international stakeholders, the program aligns with Malaysia's National Energy Transition Roadmap and its nationally determined contributions, supporting a low-carbon development path and sustainable economic growth. So today we'll be talking about the intersections between Malaysia's Indigenous Peoples Agenda, rural climate resilience, and energy access for just transition. Let's start by establishing the link between energy access, renewable energy, and indigenous climate resilience. So the first question is for Bonnie. Like in over 20 years of your work with rural indigenous communities, how have you seen renewable energy directly contribute to strengthening climate resilience in rural indigenous communities? And what does it mean to have an indigenous-led approach to energy access?
Yeah, thank you, Joe, and very good afternoon. Selamat sejahtera to all. First of all, I think I just want to share some of my experience toward the 20-year journey of building community-led renewable energy, particularly on micro hydro systems that we have been doing in Sabah, Malaysia, and also actually we have been also doing it in Sarawak and other parts of Kalimantan. Climate resilience is actually important. Building resilience is important because one of the things that the effect of climate change is very close to indigenous people, because even though the community have nothing to do with the cause of climate, but we are the first and the most vulnerable when it comes to climate change, because one of it is going to disrupt food systems, agriculture systems, and so on. So having energy on the community is very crucial, especially to ensure that the community can keep the food fresh, and they need to make sure that during drought they have water access. So having like solar pumping system really change the resilience of the community in terms of agriculture. But I think the most important part of it is actually to ensure that there's also resource management, natural resource management, especially when we were doing our micro hydro. We always tie it in towards watershed conservation, and conserving the forests within the watershed is very important, and that sort of relationship within energy access and conservation is important, and indirectly they can also ensure that the continuous access to biodiversity that is important for the community, and also making sure that the communities have other means to live by the day. The question about what is the challenges, what do we need to make sure that the communities can stay on this?
What does indigenous-led solutions mean?
Yeah, okay, sorry. I just want to reframe that. Well, there's a lot of initiative that comes into communities, and most of the time community are just in the receiving end of decision that is made somewhere in like high office. And I've seen throughout my work to see like all this deployment of solar system, like solar home systems those days in the early 2000s, late 90s, is all working, and there's no consultation with the community where to put these systems. We're not even investing on capacity building, ensuring that this system that put in the community is being well maintained. This gap is very important, and it costs a lot of money actually from the government and also private sector to put it in. So I think putting the community in the driving steering wheel, I might say, make sure that during the planning phase, you already have understood the aspirations and the demand of the community. Secondly, also to make sure that when the system is put in, they have invested the right skill sets that needed to ensure the operation and maintenance of the system, but also the money collected from the tariff doesn't go out to the community. Actually, it's to go back to the community and use for maintaining the system, employing the operators, and also looking at how to catalyze other small businesses throughout. So all the decision is made within the community, and in the community-based model that we use, we always set up a community-based energy committee, and that committee decides the tariffs, how to spend the money inside the funds that is collected through the tariff, and so on. So I think these are very important key factor in terms of making sure sustainability of the system. And I'm proud to say that most of our system, some are already like 25 years old now and still running. Long Lawan is a good example of one of the first project that we had with Green Empowerment in 2000, and it's still working until now. Yeah, thank you.
So communities at the steering wheel. And I love what you said about ensuring the climate resilience of indigenous communities. Them protecting watersheds and forests increases the climate resilience of the entire country, or other people who are depending on these watersheds. The next question is for Ayu. Sabah RE2 is now in the state plan. It's in the Sabah Energy Roadmap Master Plan 2040, CRAMP 2040. And the state government has committed to achieving 100% rural electrification by 2030 with Sabah RE2 as a key strategy. What public civic partnerships were needed to make this happen? And what kind of partnerships and coordination mechanisms are needed to see it through to reality in the near future?
Yeah, so to give a little bit of background on how Sabah RE2 started, in 2021, a group of civil society organizations came together to form a consortium. And this was, we wanted to coordinate efforts around energy access and also kind of build off of our collective experience working with rural communities, building energy systems. And so we started out, first of all, with, sort of acceptance of the state government in terms of collecting data and information. So we went out, and in the first year, 2021, we went out and mapped out all the communities and worked with the local district offices to make sure that, all the numbers were aligned and where the communities were. In the second year, we spent a lot of time engaging with other stakeholders, more agencies with the state government, and then also other stakeholders, private sector, other civil society organizations, including communities. And this really led to a sort of a recognition among all the stakeholders that this is an urgent issue and an urgent need, which led to then it being part of the CRAMP roadmap agenda from the state government. And now we come to the stage where, okay, now that it's been recognized, there's a goal and a target by the state government, what next? And I think what next is definitely a next stage of collaboration, partnerships, coordination. We need further strengthening of these types of partnerships to make sure that planning efforts both at state and federal level as well are aligned. We need more coordination around what type of policies and regulations need to happen, need to change, or what kind of reforms are needed so that we can scale mini grids very quickly. 2030 is not long. And so there's a lot of work, and we need to actually create very sort of strategic partnerships around addressing some of the main barriers that we have right now. So, yeah.
I acknowledge the problem and don't let it go, basically. I'd love to hear your perspective, Mikael, from like an international standpoint. At SE for All and prior, you've worked with decentralized energy solutions. And let's talk about like why mini grids and what policy innovations and international support mechanisms are necessary to enable the use of decentralized energy systems for wide-scale rural electrification.
Thanks, Gio, and thanks to everybody in the room. I've never been to Malaysia, I must admit, but at least now I've been to the Malaysia Pavilion. And so, yes, definitely want to visit in person your beautiful country as well. But having said that, and not having the previous experience from your country, I also looked up some of the recent data points on how Malaysia is doing, and there's something particularly of interest to us at Sustainable Energy for All, where SDG 7 is at the core of everything we do. So SDG 7, of course, speaks to the energy access as one of the pillars. There's the renewables, and there's the third pillar, which is energy efficiency. Now, zooming in on the energy access side, in Malaysia, it seemed to indicate that 100% of the population had access to electricity. But indeed, it seems that there are still a few pockets that you have identified that still need to be provided with that reliable, clean, and affordable access to electricity, which is key for so many different things like Adrian already highlighted. Now, how we've gone about it at SE for All, obviously, we often work with governments to help set the ambition right and help then prioritize SDG 7 as a key area of action. But so that's often fairly easy to set the priorities that we want to provide universal access to everyone. You know, it's easy to say that, but so what we want to do is then what next? So what has worked very well in a number of the countries where I've worked with is to translate that ambition into action through planning. And how we go concretely about it is to working it with the national stakeholders, often the governments, the line ministries, the rural energy agencies, in supporting them to come up with a national integrated energy access plan. Now, the word integrated here means that let's not only look at grid expansion and densification, but let's look at where does it make sense to push for mini grids or standalone solar. The word integrated also gives us the opportunity of not only looking at electrification connections, but let's also look at the other one, the forgotten side of the energy access challenge often, clean cooking. So what are the solutions where we can support the transition from traditional ways, which often, unfortunately, are fairly unhealthy? So what is the opportunity to transition to electric cooking, bioethanol, pellets, briquettes, biogas, whatever? Also looking at the integration of cooling, agricultural value chain, how can energy support all those functions of our daily life, give those opportunities to businesses. So to conclude, data is key. Data will drive decision making. And perhaps a very recent integrated energy access plans that we launched in Madagascar, where in Madagascar is a country, a large country, of course, where there's still the population, there's 36% of the population that has access to electricity. And so we carried out this integrated energy access plan, and the data based on the least cost model for electrifying the remaining 9 million people were 18, so roughly 20% densification, 15% expansion, 15% mini grids, and a large chunk, nearly half, through standalone solar, because of the distances and the geography involved.
Very inspiring. Thank you, Mikael. And you mentioned, I think we should address one thing that you mentioned, like when an organization like Sustainable Energy for All looks at the state of energy access across the world, you will see Malaysia as having 100% energy access, 100% electricity access. Yeah. Would you like to respond? Like that's what did you find out from the Sabah RE2 roadmap?
Yeah, so and this problem occurs not just in Sabah, but also in West Malaysia, in Peninsular Malaysia. The numbers don't include certain indigenous communities or communities that are in maybe villages that are not officially recognized, and this happens in West Malaysia quite a bit. And so the numbers are focused on where data is available, basically. And that's one of the reasons why the RE2 consortium, first of all, went out to map, because and you mentioned data being very important, right? That there was no data on off-grid areas. And so we went out to map to get a sense of the scale of the problem. And of course, I mean, before we can come up with solutions, we have to understand the problem and kind of very similar to what SC for All, I mean, what you're doing, trying to figure out, match the solutions to the problem based on context, based on need, based on some financials as well. And so, yeah, like, I mean, it's really just a dearth of data in these areas, I think.
Yeah, just to add to that, the finding of the Sabah RE, another factor in this is longevity of the systems put in. Because if you look at a lot of the solar home system that was put in year 2000, 2005, I mean, if you don't update your data, you still consider to be electrified, right? So when we came in, all of the solar home systems are already long dead. So that's why we really have to come back to still how are you doing? You know, so even when it comes to electrification programs, we still have to come back and see how are these system doing, because that's a problem when you put a solar home system or solar project or any RE system doesn't mean that it will last long if you don't follow up. So I think that the follow up after what the intervention have been done has to be also ongoing, and it's just like ticking off the box. I just add to that. Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Just to add to that point, I think that's why the video that we saw here earlier, I think it's very good, because I mean these tools, to having that high-level overview and then being able to zoom down and looking at what the infrastructure is in place, road, grid, etc. But Adrian, to your point, yes, and therefore the surveys and the detailed data will only be, you know, achieved through collecting it in person in the communities. So it's very important to have that reliable data, because that's not only data for decision makers in central government or local governments, but that is also if you want to attract private sector investments. I mean, data drives investments as well. And if you have that at hand in some other countries, I'm not sure it is applicable here, but is then able to attract the investors and the business people as well. Because
Thank you, everyone. Data and planning. Let's talk about scale, because we touched on that a little bit in the earlier discussions. To Adrian and Ayu, what are some of the challenges in scaling these types of solutions? Decentralized energy solutions, community-based projects. How can we work together to overcome these challenges?
So I think I start with from my own experience, because even though I've been doing this for the last 20 years, the problem is like the lack of acknowledgement or the policy framework when it comes to looking at mini grid or community-based projects. So it all depends on how the national government do planning. And in Malaysia, it's all under the KPLB, the Rural Ministry. It's not even Energy Ministry. So it's very hard when you have a program that is run not by an energy expert. So that is really creating the gap. So when they put in money for the infrastructure, it doesn't. Of course, it still goes through the planning and getting input from the different agency, but it sometimes overshadowed by other priorities of the ministry, and that is why I think a lot of this community-led or community-based system or even mini grids are not been properly recognized as something important. That's why there is one barrier to that. And also the over-reliance of one technology, solar. I mean, I'm not here to say solar is bad, but for me, there is so much other renewable energy options out there. And for Malaysia, and I come from Borneo, where we have tons of rain every year, we always have problem with solar. But we have a lot of water, you know? But we are not getting enough attention when it comes to the small-scale run-of-river systems. And that is why in the discussion of renewable energy, we should not be focused on one technology. We should also look at this potential energy. And I see there is also potential to connect it with conservation. That's why I must say
for the local communities, right? So policy needs to change. So that, without that, it's very difficult to kind of scale up these solutions. And then we do need regulatory reforms. We don't have clear regulations for systems under 72 kilowatts, because the sort of like the understanding of our utility, of our energy commission and all that are, most systems are connected to the grid. And there's no sort of recognition or clarity around systems that are off-grid. So that first needs to change, because without that, how can you have systems that are technically that are up to code and are safe for communities and have a certain level of service as well that is appropriate? So that all needs to change, and we do need to consider that these communities are extremely remote. They're in mountainous areas, there are no roads. Distributed systems are the best solutions. And then we need to figure out ways to also open up the space for other stakeholders to come in, not just our state utility, which has the mandate for rural electrification now. So we need to open it up to, potentially other project developers, other energy practitioners, but do it in a way that builds a safe and thriving ecosystem to deliver energy access fairly and justly. So it would be great also to have, we were working with the state government to also think about how can communities own, manage and operate their own systems, and have this be within, sort of the regulations and the policies of the state government as well.
Thank you, Ayu and Bonnie. Miguel, we've heard the challenges, like over-reliance on a single solution, policy, limitations, regulations. And you've worked with a lot of country governments in advancing SDG 7. What have you seen to be effective strategies for building capacity and buy-in and commitments from governments so that SDG 7 could be taken to the finish line? We can achieve universal energy access.
Yeah. Maybe answer it from the latter part of your question. I mean, the recent analysis we did on progress on SDG 7 seems to indicate that with the current pace of progress, or lack of it, rather, 660 million people will be without electricity in 2030. And roughly a quarter of this population then, an estimated 1.8 billion, still not access to clean. So those are quite striking numbers. Now, obviously, therefore, it's not just the governments that need to set the ambition right, provide plans, create the enabling environment. They need to be attractive enough to attract private sector investments that will need to be and are and increasing must be part of that solution for us to meet those targets. So it is clear also, and it goes without saying, I'm sure, in this room as well, that there can also be no net zero without sustainable energy for all. Therefore, SDG 7 by 2030 is a key milestone in this energy transition and climate action agenda that we're all speaking about here in Baku as well today.
Follow up on you mentioned involving the private sector for financing. Like this morning's panel on funding the just energy transition, one of our panelists said, show me the money, show me a bankable project. And one thing that has been a challenge and a tall order for energy access programs is to generate profit and wealth from the last mile. It's a tall order. And I'm interested in how, in SE for All, how have you navigated that tension? What kinds of financing solutions have you seen work, given these, given those two polarities?
Yeah, so I'm looking at my notes so that I get the numbers right, but there was also another data point, I think, which is very important in this discussion, which is often forgotten about, and that's that the fossil fuel subsidies globally stood at 7 trillion and are expected to rise to 8.2 trillion by 2030. Now, a carving out some of that to meet the energy access challenge globally shouldn't be a problem, one would think, because what we're looking at to meet the clean cooking objectives, we're speaking about single-digit billions. So it's easy to stop the discussion that, okay, where is the money coming? There's money. I mean, I don't know how much money the government found when COVID struck. I mean, the money that's needed to meet SDG 7 on energy access are minimal. So if there's will, there's a way, and let's just, you know, change the business as usual and transition from those fossil fuel subsidies to clean green solutions and meet those targets that we set ourselves. It's good for the people, it's good for the planet, and it's good for prosperity. So everybody wins. Over.
Thank you. Thank you. That was amazing. I see a lot of heads nodding and a lot of agreement in the room. Yeah. And I think this is a good time to make this a conversation with everyone here. We'd love to invite comments, questions, thoughts from your experience. And we'd invite you to speak, introduce yourselves, and like share your thoughts, comments, and questions.
Thank you so very much. I'm sorry, I was distracted somehow along the line. So, but the parts of the presentation that I followed, I really enjoyed everything. And then the last speaker touched on something that actually resonated very well with me. But I think the issue is that if subsidies are removed from fossil fuels, how sure are we that the government is going to put back this subsidy in renewable energy? I'll give you a case of what is happening in my country, Nigeria. We used to buy PMS, that people call petrol. We buy it for 290 naira per liter. That was just about 1 year ago. But a new government came into power and decided to remove subsidy, and then removed subsidy. And then that means that, you know, prices are now, you know, responding to market forces. And suddenly within 1 year, it soared and became almost multiplied by 10, 8, 9, 10 of what it used to be within 1 year, and created a lot of hardship for the populace. Because, you know, the PMS actually, once there is a change in the price, it reflects on everything, in goods, services, and so that means that, you know, people are paying, you know, for the removal in a number of ways. You're paying through, you know, transport, you are paying on food items, you are paying on, when you go to hotel to sleep, you are paying everywhere, and then also, you know, everything in response to these forces. So I think the issue is that if the government is sincere, I agree with your suggestion. But I think because if you look at the data speaks that this amount of money, if we can remove it from subsidizing fossil fuel, and we can put it into clean, green, renewable energy, then it will be good for all. Now, government in Nigeria is, you know, encouraging the populace to go on CNG. That's what we call CNG, compressed natural gas. Okay, if you can't afford this, go and change your vehicles, conform it to CNG, you know, powered. But as of today, CNG is very expensive. It's beyond the reach of an average Nigerian. Even me, myself, I am a university lecturer. Okay? To convert my vehicle to CNG, it will take about almost 1 year of my salary. And that's crazy. So that means that it's beyond the reach of an ordinary citizen. And so it's a problem. So I think that we need to do more, particularly to speak to those who are in power, those who are in government, to stop paying lip services to energy transition. And then they should do what they need to do to encourage people at every level to embrace this idea of green energy. Thank you so very much. I'd like to ask you a question. That's just a comment. The question, I'm sorry. The question is that, with respect to this rural electrification journey in Sabah, I really love the idea. I wish that something like this can also spring, in my country. I'm sure that there are pockets of ideas that are actually, being implemented by different organizations. But the issue is that I want to ask, with respect to willingness to pay for these services that you are giving them, especially by rural households. And then will you also consider that if you do a comparative analysis of the costs of being connected to the off-grid and the cost of this solution, cost-wise, do you think that this makes the people better off or not? That's just a general question I want to ask. Thank you.
Anyone on the panel would like to take that? Vani, go ahead.
Thank you so much. I think the issue of willingness to pay comes with the whole idea of the community-owned. That's where it is, because in most of our projects, what happened is like even the tariff is collectively decided, and making sure that they understand that whatever money you pay is actually to pay for the service that you get back. So I like to say here that the tariff that been set by the community is higher than what the national grid costs. For example, if it's in Malaysia, it's 30 cents or 40 cents. They're actually paying RM1 for that. But because they understand this money goes to them and it's going to for the purpose of running the system by them, there's collective decision that this is the amount that we need to pay. So they have able to do that. And the problem is, okay, cash. They don't have a cash economy. But the community have come up with a very innovative way to pay. They can pay using chicken, rice, and thing. And in the productive end use hub, they process and sell this product outside collectively. And that's how the cooperative own money, by selling rice and village kampung chicken or salted fish. That's how they pay. It's not paid by ringgit and so. So that's why we have to be able to come up with innovative way to pay and then not push how the money the economy, cash economy tends to look at energy excess. So that's just my experience from the system. And yeah, it still work, and they're still able to do that just by paying through like salted fish or rice and so on.
Thank you, Vani. Anyone else would like to add? Yeah, go ahead, Mikhail.
So one thing I wanted to kind of come back to the question on subsidies or sort of government political will and all of that. One thing that I think we need to really sort of communicate more to governments is this is sort of like it cuts across many different sectors, and so in terms of energy access, it's not just energy access, right? It's also there is also the moral imperative of making sure that we are electrifying like all of our society members. But then rural communities are also on the front lines of climate change, and they are the last front line. Like they're the last ones defending the environment because of their still very close relationship and livelihoods depending on the environment. And so we need to actually protect the last line, the front line. And so we need to make this very relevant to our governments. Another thing that I think doesn't get talked about enough is sort of the fact that when we put energy systems in rural communities, we're also validating rural lifestyles and livelihoods. And what that means that it becomes a very viable way to live. And this also reduces rural to urban migration and stress on cities. We talk so much about, reducing stress, resilience of cities and all of this, but we don't think about the fact that our rural areas, if we build that up, that's another viable way of living. And in developed countries, we have a lot of, urban to rural migration because it is a viable lifestyle. But why in developing countries is it not seen as a viable lifestyle? So I think thinking outside of like just energy access and rural electrification gives us a little bit more perspective on why this is important to put on government's agendas.
Yeah, hi, Lionel. Did I introduce myself? Yes, okay. I represent the Photovoltaic Industry Association of Malaysia. I'm the secretary of the current committee. Interesting question about off-grid systems. What we find is that the name of the university escapes me at the moment, but what we've found from our side here as well is that the moment you put in electricity into a rural area, the first sizings is usually, a couple of lights, a fan, that's it. Suddenly, the moment the solar system goes in, we get a report. I've done this before because I've had to do this. Your system doesn't work. Why? I don't know. I mean, I plugged in the TV, the refrigerator, the washing machine, and everything else, but it doesn't work now. Why? Your system is lousy. So we have a reverse problem of that as well. So how, the question is basically for all of you, how do we keep it to maintain that lifestyle, but at the same time afford them the connectivity, especially with the internet and the rest of that? Yeah, how do you balance that off? Yeah, curious.
Thank you, Lionel. Is it okay if we take the question from Suraj as well, and then we'll go back to the panel.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Saroj Rai. I'm with SNV, a Netherlands-based global development partner. I'm part of the global energy team. I keep on traveling in different countries in Africa and Asia. I could be mistaken as a Malaysian or a Filipino or Thai, but then I'm from Nepal. So maybe some of the points that I wanted to raise is related to some points already mentioned, but basically 2 points from my side. First, yes, I think we have to think a little bit beyond the energy sphere, because the people that we are trying to help, or we are helping, they need a lot of things. But then, of course, we may not be able to bring everything that they need. It's not possible, probably not desirable as well. But then, when we are talking about energy system to make it sustainable, somebody mentioned about bankable project, then we definitely have to think of having what we call, the productive use of energy. I mean, how do we promote to improve the, let's say, load, so that we make money out of the system, and then with the money, the system can continue, being operated, or capacities are retained. But then for that, we really have to work on the rural enterprise development aspect, micro enterprise development aspect. Because without that kind of additional intervention, just expecting people to be entrepreneurial, start something, may not work. So these two things together as a bigger package. Of course, I wish that we have a lot bigger package, but then again, probably that's not possible or not desirable, as I said earlier. So with that kind of energy plus enterprise development package should be the right way in my view, so that at one point, these projects, which at the moment are not economically viable, so they are to be subsidized from one or another source, could eventually be bankable for the banks to provide, whatever small amount of loan that is needed to scale up or to replicate these things in the remaining communities. I don't know how many communities there are remaining in remote Malaysia. The second point again, from my experience in Nepal, we also have a very good, or rather long history of micro hydro, mini hydro development in my country. The last figure I heard was something like 35 megawatt equivalent, micro hydro, mini hydro units in the country. The unfortunate part has to do with two things. One, they not being maintained, again, because of the money issue. When there is a problem, then you don't have money to repair it. Communities start fighting rather than coming together and then doing the work. So then at the end, it is just abandoned for a very small region because there is no money to bring whatever technician or spare parts. The second thing is more of probably a structural policy issue. That is, at one point, politicians decide to bring grid to the village because that's already a very politically good sounding thing to do. Okay, so-and-so villages electrified so that the leaders get elected in the next election or something. Then once that happens, then the fate of these microhydro. So I wish there was a policy that the microhydro get connected to the grid and then everything just goes smooth. But then if that is not in place and you can't influence the policy to make that happen, that the nice things that we develop, even with the improved load with the other interventions, may just be abandoned. So please think of those aspects as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll take one response and then the panel will respond and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, it's going back to the panel this morning when they were saying, show me the money. And they were saying, well, there are around 95 subsidies there. We are paying like the lowest price for, in Malaysia, we probably pay the lowest price for around 95 anywhere in the world, of which, you know, even lower than Saudi and UAE and these countries. And as we have seen, 53% of that subsidy, which runs into probably about $5 billion US, goes to the 20% richest people in the country. So yeah, so much for subsidies going to the poor. And of course, if you add the fossil fuel subsidies, it's even larger. I was on the National Steering Committee of the Small Grants project of the GEF when we awarded the project to Tony Bong to do the micro-hydro installation just outside Kota Kinabalu. Remember where we went, and then Gurmit rolled down the hill, fell and rolled down the hill, unfortunately. And so close, 1.5 hours away from Kota Kinabalu. And the first thing is, why did it take this long for this community to get electricity? And why did it have to come from a grant? You know, when the government could have easily afforded to put that in, because with the small grants project, it's only $50,000 US over 2 years, you know, which is really on the scale of things very little. And then on another site visit for the small grants program, we went to Tasik Chini, you know, which is just an hour away from a big city in the East Coast, Kuantan. The Orang Asli community there does not have electricity. And now I understand from what you said, it's probably because they don't have tenure to the land. Because every time there's the forest, you know, their land use changes, they have to relocate. Even though the small grants program enable them to do organic farming, from which, you know, growing vegetables, from which they were generating a good income. But the whole village did not have electricity. And 1.5 hours away, Kuantan is like bright lights and big roads and all that. You know, it's unfair. The point I want to make is, again, I think it's quite similar to the previous two questions. We're doing, you know, a just energy transition project in Malaysia. Well, we're doing it, you know, a project in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Philippines. In Malaysia, we've been looking at the implementation of large-scale solar, as well as small-scale rural electrification projects. And we've come up with the same frustrations from the community as well. Sometimes, and we found that it's not them getting more appliances, it's that sometimes it's done in a top-down manner without the community engagement. So they come, you know, they put it there, there's no community consultation, and then suddenly, you know, simple things like it's either the panels don't face the right way or the community is not involved. So it's like, you know, once in a while you have to go and clean the panel, you can do some basic maintenance. They were done, none of that sort. So what happens is after 6 months, stop working. And then they go, you know, solar, you know, this renewable energy is bad. Solar is a waste of time, which is very unfortunate because it's not done in an inclusive manner.
to all the comments. Now, we have to wrap up. And keeping all of these in mind, productive use, long-term operations and maintenance, bankability, and making sure that we're not approaching this from the top down. Have you got any parting words, like words of wisdom, advice, and how do we take this forward? Where do we go from here?
Yeah, from my side, I think this very important to have also the right tools to do the design, and it has to be collaborative. The design has to be collaborative. It cannot be done by someone and it's all cut and paste design. That's a problem with a lot of the system is cut and paste. You don't want to go through the consultation process. That's why the Sabah RE process is very important, where you actually make down and also register the aspirations of the community. Because sometimes we just assume that they only need lights, they don't need so they just like we come up with all the list of appliances that the system can support, but it cannot be done that way. It has to be co-creation. It has to be done together with the proper tools. Secondly, I'm really agreeable to my brother in Nepal, because I actually learned microhydro in Nepal. I went there for training in 2001. And I brought that technology back to Sabah, and I've been doing that ever since. And that technology transfer program that was facilitated in BTC, Balaju Technical Center, was really an eye-opening for me, because, hey, this technology is so easy. How come we are not promoting it? And that time I saw community making their own turbine, and this is something that is wow. And Nepal is already doing it. Can we bring it? But when I brought it in Sabah, nobody pay attention because it's too small. Yeah, that is the problem, because when it comes to like providing a rural electrification, they want to look at the money, the investment, and so on. So I think we have to change that. So I really agree that if we can tie it in together with the development assistance, I think that's where it's really going to make a lot of impact. Because if it's just energy, yeah, I mean, there's so much framework that we're competing with, but if tie it in, because that's my experience, I tie it in with conservation. Thank you.
I'm gonna answer your question with just one word. Check out Comet. It's a bit of a plug for me, a shameless plug, I'll tell you later. But I think for me, closing words would just be that this is a very solvable problem for Malaysia. It's not a large problem. We have the resources to do it. We have the capacity to do it. And we really should. And if the evidence is not sufficient to convince the government that we need to do this, I think one sort of closing thing to leave everyone with is that what we're talking about with decentralized energy systems, distributed energy systems, it doesn't stop at rural electrification. I've been in the energy access space for over 15 years, and a lot of the technologies, delivery models, business models, is all the building blocks for a liberalized energy market. Peer-to-peer, mesh grids, all of this started out in the off-grid sector. And so if we're thinking of the future energy system, what that's going to look like, all we need to do is look at the off-grid space right now, and that's how it's going to look like in the future. And that's just the thought that I want to leave everyone with.
Yeah, some departing thoughts on energy access. I think it's good to remember that the cost of inaction far exceeds the cost of investments and the positive returns that it brings. The socio-economic ones that you spoke about, the gender, health, environment benefits are in the billions. And also the business case is there now. The cost of renewable energies, the cost of batteries, it's all very much doable, and it is cheaper than the old-fashioned fossil fuel burning generators in the backyard. So that's it.
Thank you very much to our panelists for an insightful conversation. To members of the audience, you've been amazing. Thank you for participating. Please join me in thanking our panelists for today and for their committed work to energy access. And thank you to our audience, both in the room and online. This was the Sabah RE2 journey. The work continues. Thank you again, and have a good rest of your day. Take care.
guy. Can we have a group photo first? Why go? Okay, another one photo with the bags. One last shot with the bag. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today. Thank you. Thank you for coming.